We choose this life. If you don't want this pressure, go be a fucking dentist. You'll make good money. Most of the dentists I know don't work Fridays. That's not what you and I are going for, Danny. Like, you and I, like, we want to be in the arena. We want to build something really meaningful and special. And whatever the reason, some of us are doing it because of money. Some of us are doing it because of impact. Some of us are doing it because, like, someone in high school told us we were no good, and we just want to prove it to everyone that we are good, that we are valuable, that we can be successful. Whatever your reason is, I would say, rather than trying to remove that pressure, embrace it and try to find ways to channel it into really productive outcomes and impact. I like that this is, I like that you're running this by yourself, first of all. I love that. Because I do a lot of podcasts and did a podcast yesterday. I had a production team of 30 people. 30 people. If you can guess which one it is, I may not tell you, but if you guess it, maybe I'll tell you, but we'll do it off camera. 30 people. You're doing it by yourself. This is how I always started. This is how I still start most things. One-man operation, get it done. And it's great. And frankly, even the way you're able to get me onto the show, dude, great hustle. I'm impressed.
Well, why are you here? Why are you on the show?
I don't know. I liked your approach. I liked the way that you asked me to come on the show. I liked the way that you got sort of the broader Shopify / entrepreneur community to encourage me to do the show. It felt very grassroots. I like that. I mean, I get a chance to do tons of great podcasts and shows, but at the end of the day, I'm a scrappy entrepreneur. And I think I don't know you that well, but you seem to be a scrappy entrepreneur.
Yeah.
So that matters to me.
Yeah. I definitely was researching you, going deep in your story, and noticed that. And I would love to start with your dad handing you business cards.
Yeah.
That was pivotal for you.
It was. And now, as a father of two myself, I realize the impact that giving your child confidence can have long term. My mom and dad we were always very sort of middle class. It turns out we were probably lower middle class, but they never really told me that. But we were always middle class. And so when I wanted to start another crazy business idea, which I always kind of had another idea, they couldn't support me financially, but they could support me from a confidence perspective. And every time I had another crazy business idea, instead of my parents telling me that's a stupid idea, or no, or that's a distraction, or it's never going to work, my dad showed up with business cards with that new company, Harley Finkelstein, owner of said DJ company or said t-shirt company or said whatever company. That was pivotal because it made it seem like I can do anything. And when I failed, it wasn't a big deal either. So yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of people that listen to this podcast that are parents. And I just want to the lesson for me as a dad of two now is that these small little decisions, these small little tidbits, these small little things that we do for our children have a profound impact long term. And my dad probably made me that first business card, I don't know, 25 years ago, more than that, 28 years ago at this point, when I was like 13. That changed my life because it gave me what my mother would say, chutzpah, or the audacity that, hey, this is a real thing.
Why did you reach out to Seth Godin when you were going to become a parent yourself?
Because most people know Seth is this incredible marketer. He's probably the greatest marketer on the planet. And almost everyone that's ran a company has read The Purple Cow because this is an important concept of branding and marketing and growth. But what they haven't seen, and I'm fortunate to have witnessed myself, is his relationship with his two sons, and his relationship with Helene, his wife. It is remarkable what an incredible father and husband he is, and friend he is. Seth doesn't eat meat, but when you go to his house, he cooks the most delicious meat if he knows you like it. Seth doesn't drink alcohol, but he makes the most delicious flavored vodka. And Seth doesn't drink coffee, but he makes the greatest cup of coffee on the planet. All those things may seem kind of random and who cares? It speaks volumes in terms of how empathetic he is. His empathy dial is at 11. And even if he himself can enjoy the vanilla flavored vodka or the delicious coffee after dinner, he knows that I might enjoy it, and therefore he spends a lot of time thinking about making it. And the reason that I reach out to him on the parenting side, and frankly on the marriage side too, is we all have these great mentors, and usually the mentors we have in our life, they resemble one category of our life. So we want to be great entrepreneurs or successful business people, and so we seek out the most successful business person we know. But what you may not realize is that person may have a horrible relationship with their children or their spouse. And so instead of sort of looking at like a one size fits all for a mentor, what if you actually looked and said, I want a mentor for being a great husband, a mentor for being a great, a community member, philanthropy, a mentor for being a great husband or parent or whatever it might be. That's why Seth is a huge part of my life, and I'm grateful to have him in my life.
How do you pick those people?
Well, that's really tough because you only often see one smidget of their experience. There is a chance that you may decide to pick you pick a mentor in entrepreneurship because you think they're a great entrepreneur, but turns out like they're broke, or I don't know, maybe they grew up rich. And so, the easiest way to make $1 million is to start with $100 million, that sort of thing. Someone that was born in third base. But if you have, if you have an instinct about someone, maybe that person is really good at this thing, and you say, hey, can I get to know you better? Can I buy you a cup of coffee? Can I spend some time with you? Can we have dinner together? You'll realize very quickly whether or not they are legit. And if they are, you can double down the relationship and the mentorship. And if they're not, you sort of say, hey, look, that was great, but this is not going to go anywhere. But it's, the famous saying is, it's easy to look at people's highlight reel, but you often don't see their blooper reel. The more time you spend with someone, the more you discover their blooper reel. And it's actually their blooper reel that speaks far more volume about their character than their highlight reel. And so I've made a lot of mistakes like this. I've doubled down on relationships only to find out later that person was not who I thought they were he or she was. And at that point you say, look, that's great. I learned a little bit, but it's time for me to move on. And then the other part about sort of the mentorship side is there's a shelf life for great mentors. Some mentors will be, timeless mentors in your life. I hope that Seth is a part of my life for the rest of my life. But there's been mentors at a particular time, they were a really great mentor. And then as I developed, they were just less valuable to me over time. And I'm still friends with them, but the mentor-mentee relationship dissolved because it wasn't as valuable anymore.
How do you do that? Like, how do you actually go about saying to somebody who you're once friends with or once close with, this isn't going to be a forever thing?
Well, let's separate a couple of things because there's a couple different levels of abstraction here. First of all, if you talk about sort of friends and family, there are certain friends and family in your life that are going to be net multipliers for energy, exothermic multipliers, and there's going to be friends and family that are going to be net, energy vampires. And I mean, you got to cut out energy vampires. There's no question about it. And the easy way to do it is if you're able to, simply just back off, and you don't have to have a weird, awkward conversation. But if they're hounding you and saying, hey, why are we not spending time together? You can say, look, I'm on this personal growth journey, and you are not helping me get to the next step. And because you're not helping me to get to the next step, it's not working. It's not you, it's me. And that's one category. In terms of the mentorship, advisoryship stuff, it's a very you can do so in a non-tense way. You can say, look, I really loved spending time with you over the last couple of years for that particular stage of my professional life. For this next phase, do you know anyone who's gone through that in it? Think about it from a company perspective, like Series A, Series B, Series C IPO. The people that were really helpful in your Series A or Series B may not be the same people that are going to be helpful to you post IPO. And I think if you have good mentors in your life who are deeply thoughtful and actually give a shit about you, really care about you, they're going to understand that. But you don't have to make it an awkward thing.
How much of your mentors were in real life versus virtual?
Almost all real life. Some of them started. I first met Seth during one of the Build a Business competitions. And so our relationship started with phone calls about being a mentor for Build a Business. And then him and I spent a week together on Necker Island at Richard Branson's place. And I don't know, we kind of I kind of fell in love with this guy, right? I don't mean that in a romantic way. I just mean his personality. He was there with his wife, and I remember watching him, how he engaged with his wife and how he spoke to his wife and how he brought his wife along for his own journey. I was blown away by it. But generally, the mentors that I have in my life are very much in person. I'm an in-person person, notwithstanding the fact that the last couple of years have been challenging because of COVID. I like being in person. You and I could have done this virtually. I'm not sure the quality of this interview would be the same.
Yeah, definitely. And speaking of COVID and how you dealt with that, I did research for this and found out that you leaned heavily on guided meditations and breath work in order to help yourself in a time when you get energy from other people, but you were more isolated. Talk to me about that.
I had a really, really tough couple of years with COVID. Professionally, things were crazy. I mean, Shopify, we were really fortunate that overnight, every physical retailer shut down, and we were the recipient of all these incredible retailers and merchants and brands moving online, and most of them did so with Shopify. So professionally, things were crazy and exciting, and things were, it was an interesting time at the company. But professionally, it wasn't a great time for me. I felt incredibly lonely. And so I recognized a couple of things. One is my anxiety levels were escalating. And two, my loneliness quotient was also escalating. I felt more lonely. I wasn't, I had my family there, but I felt more lonely. And so one of the things that I knew that was helpful for me from an anxiety perspective was meditation. And I just doubled down and I was like, okay, like if I was doing 3 minutes before, I'm going to do 9 minutes now. And even breath work, I started to look at breath work. Historically, I used, I guess they call the box method. So 4 breaths in, hold for 4, 4 breaths out, hold for 4. And I just began reading as much as I could about, okay, is that the most effective way? It turns out it's not. From a physiological perspective, and maybe we can share this, I can share this post with you later on. You can share with your listeners. But 2 in, and then like 2 quick breaths in. So 2 quick in, 1 long out happens to actually be better in terms of activating the parasympathetic nervous system. So I started researching this more and understanding it more. And as sort of COVID, whatever, I don't know if it ended per se officially, but now that we're sort of back in person, I've continued those practices. But that period of time I got really interested and curious about longevity. I joined this little group. It's called Longevity League. It's kind of sounds like a lame name, but this group of people that are, for the most part, 2, 3, 4 decades older than I am. Some of these guys are in the 40s and 50s and 60s, and they spend a great deal of their time researching longevity. And so I was like, hey, can I join your club? And initially they're like, well, you're not really the right demographic and you're not really the right age. They let me in and I try to add as much value, but I started to think more about longevity. And some of it is just like, metformin right now seems to be everywhere. Everyone seems to be taking metformin who's over the age of 50 right now.
What is that?
And metformin is actually a diabetic, it's medication for type 2 diabetes, but it turns out lower dosages of it is really helpful for things like inflammation, which can potentially lead to cancer. So I was like, oh, I'm reading about metformin. Like, let me bring this to the longevity group and figure out what these great people think and smart people think. So I started thinking more about longevity, started thinking more about mental health. And, we're in Austin together right now at your studio. The first thing I did when I woke up this morning was I went for a run, sat at a hotel nearby, and then I meditated for 10 minutes. Am I better now because I did that than I would have without? Maybe not. Like, I don't really know, but over the long run, absolutely. Because I can manage my anxiety better. I feel like I've been on the, this is the last day of a 2-week roadshow that I've been on from New York to Arizona to San Francisco to Los Angeles and now here in Texas. I haven't seen my family in 2 weeks, which is really, really tough. And actually I get to go home tonight and see my wife and my kids, which I'm really excited by. But because I'm on the road like this, and this is a media tour, investor tour, partner tour, merchant tour, I need to take care of myself. And so I need to have real habits and rituals in my life that allow me to just to keep going at the same energy levels over time. And like you, I'm a hustler, I'm an entrepreneur. I got a lot going on. I need to create some scaffolding in order to maintain this level of energy. Otherwise, it's just not going to work.
Yeah. Talk to me about, I heard you mention in a previous podcast about how, you say or you breathe a certain way, you impact the stock price by potentially millions of dollars. So there's a tremendous amount of pressure on you. And you mentioned, you do breath work, you run, you meditate, but like, how do you deal with that pressure?
I try to channel it. I try not to. In the same way that I think anyone that has anxiety or depression you're not going to ever eliminate it entirely. The better strategy, I think, is to manage it. So when I feel really anxious, do some breath work or go for a run or, do something that one of my tactics that helps me manage it too. Same thing on the pressure. I actually really like the pressure sometimes. There are certain times where, I'm not sure if I breathe a certain way, the stock's going to change, but certainly if I say the wrong thing on television on CNBC or I say the wrong thing on an earnings call, that could affect the stock price. And actually, I don't really care about the stock price in the short run. What I do appreciate is that the amount of people that are counting on me to do a good job there. We have 10,000 people at Shopify. We have 3 million or many millions of merchants on the platform. We have lots of partners, the general public. I mean, in Canada, we're sort of Canada's tech company. There's a lot of people that are relying on Shopify. And I think I take that responsibility very seriously. So I try to use that pressure as a tactic to memorize the right metrics and make sure I have my story and my narrative down pat, to make sure that on what day was that? On Wednesday, I was one of the speakers at the Morgan Stanley conference in San Francisco with our new CFO, Jeff, and woke up that morning and it was like day 10 on this roadshow. I wasn't feeling myself. I was like, okay, get your shit together. I went for a run. I don't really do the whole cold bath thing or anything. It's not my style, but I took a colder shower than usual. And I just reviewed my notes and I was like, okay, here's the narrative. And Jeff and I met for a coffee beforehand. We're like, okay, here's exactly how we think about things. Here are the questions we think we're going to get. I try to use that anxiety, use that pressure to create better results. I work well under pressure, even in undergrad, but also in grad school and in business school and law school. I was a crammer. I was a procrastinator. But when it came time to perform, I think I did a good job of that. So I'm not trying to remove that pressure. It's we choose this life. If you don't want this pressure, go be a fucking dentist. You'll make good money. Most of the dentists I know don't work Fridays. That's not what you and I are going for, Danny. You and I, we want to be in the arena. We want to build something really meaningful and special. And whatever the reasons, some of us are doing it because of money. Some of us are doing it because of impact. Some of us are doing it because someone in high school told us we were no good, and we just want to prove it to everyone that we are good, that we are valuable, that we can be successful. Whatever your reason is, I would say rather than trying to remove that pressure, embrace it and try to find ways to channel it into really productive outcomes and impact.
One of the ways in which you've potentially dealt with pressure or learned how to deal with pressure was through Moot Court. Explain to me what Moot Court is and why you were particularly good at it.
Yep. So before I do that, let me just talk a little bit about law school, because you've obviously done research on this. I went to law school not to be a lawyer, but to become a better entrepreneur. And one of the great the way that I viewed it was I was paying tuition to the law school. And in return, I was going to require that the law school repaid me in a set of skills. And some of those skills were obvious, like writing and reading and comprehension. One of those skills was critical debate or, frankly, arguing. And Moot Court is effectively a fake court. You have a judge, you have counsel on both sides for the defendant, and it depends on the court you're on, but you have a prosecutor and defendant, and if you're in a criminal court setting, otherwise you have for and against on any particular civil law case, and ultimately it forces you to actually get really good at not only having your story and your arguments down well and understanding those well, but also on the other side knowing what they're going to ask you. And so you begin to anticipate, I know what the opposing counsel is going to ask me about. Therefore, here are the 3 things I'm going to have in my pocket when they ask those questions. And so Moot Court, which is very much like debating club, which I did a bit in high school, was really valuable in that way. And I think years ago there was sort of this trend that a lot of great public speakers did improv classes. I would say that Moot Court or debate is very similar, is akin to that for entrepreneurship, because you have to not only know your argument, but you have to know opposing counsel, or you have to know the person on the other side's argument. In the case of debate, it'd be for and against. Be it resolved that whatever, like someone takes the for, someone takes the against. And if I had to rewind the clock, I probably wouldn't go to business school again. I don't think business school is that valuable. I think this is just one person's opinion, but I think the reason to go to business school in modern day, like in 2023 or 2026 or whatever year you're listening to this podcast in, is because of the network. And so if you're going to a school that has a ridiculous network, INSEAD or Harvard or Wharton or Stanford or, whatever incredible business school, it's one thing. I didn't go to one of those Ivy League schools. I went to a good school, but the network was not that valuable. Whereas law school, I actually think was way more valuable from a skill acquisition perspective. And if I had to do it all over again, one of the other ways that I would have approached even high school was take more classes that would be valuable to me longer term, as opposed to just take classes to get me into the next college. Like, school historically is, I think for most of us, a means to an end. You go to the ninth grade, you go to middle school to go to high school, you go to high school to go to college, you go to college to go to grad school. I actually think if I can rewind the clock, I would much prefer to have looked at even high school as, okay, what are the skills that I can learn here? How can I get better at the things that I may eventually want to do? And I took, I did an undergrad in economics, and one of the best courses I took in the undergrad at McGill was financial accounting. But at the time, I didn't realize it. At the time, when I was sitting in financial accounting, I was 17 or 18 years old when I started undergrad. I was like, I need to do well here, because like, you're supposed to do well in college. Whereas if I do it all over again, I'd be like, okay, let me actually learn financial accounting really well, because it turns out it's really important.
Yeah, but it's hard for you to think about how the best way to approach school is when your family comes under financial ruin. What was that like when you had built up? It seemed like you had gone to a great public high school, and then it's like your family loses all the money.
Yeah, it was traumatic, and it's traumatic to have any situation in our lives. The one thing though that I'm turning 40 this year, and I feel like you, I think, incredibly blessed of the life that I have. Right? I mean, I literally have the greatest job for me on the fucking planet. Like, I'm the president of what I believe is the greatest company ever. Shopify is so important to me and so meaningful to me. And I have the greatest wife in the world who I'm head over heels in love with, and I have these great kids. And so I'm full of gratitude these days. Let me actually say something that I wasn't gonna share with you, but this morning I woke up early to go for a run, and I checked my phone, and I got a text from my dad that my grandmother died this morning. Yeah, that's heavy, right? And I was going to cancel my day and fly back right away. But the funeral's not for a couple of days, and I'll be home in time for that. But even through that, I tried to sit there with that, like, I'm not at a point yet where I haven't fully mourned her. This happened literally 5 hours ago. But I was filled with gratitude that I've had my grandmother till she was 95 years old. She was a Holocaust survivor, and I had her. And I actually think that bad shit's going to happen to us. You're going to lose a loved one. Your family's going to go broke. I think the way that we handle these things is really important. The way I'm trying to handle this today, sitting here 5 hours after finding out that my grandmother passed away, and she was sick for a while. This wasn't a huge surprise. So just to be clear, I don't want to overdo the emotion of it. But we were waiting at some point. We knew she was going to pass at some point, but it happened this morning. But as I was sort of reflecting on, like, oh my God, none of my friends even have grandmothers around. I've had both my grandmothers around till I was 39 years old. I was filled with gratitude, and when I realized sitting there in that moment, laying in bed, looking at that text message from my dad that his mom had just passed, was the things that actually seem like a trauma, or that seem like that create real conflict in our lives, that really cause us to be sad and angry. That is actually the stuff that builds a real character. And so if I can continue on my day today, rather than being sad about my grandmother, rather feeling grateful that I've had my grandmother since she was 95 years old. Like, this is a woman who shouldn't have been 13 years old. Like, she was in the Holocaust, right? She was her and my grandfather were the only two people in their families who survived, like, Auschwitz, the most treacherous, dangerous concentration camp. Man, am I lucky. And I think when I look back on it's a long answer, short question. When I look back on that, losing everything when I was 17, I became an entrepreneur then. That's when I always was a tinkerer, but that's when I really became an entrepreneur. And while I wish that I wouldn't have got that call from my mom in 2001 to say, we've lost everything, I don't know if I'd be here without that. And So the more that these things happen, that bad shit happens to us, and the more that we get good at being resilient, the better I think we become as human beings, and the better we become as people that can deal with shit that happens that we don't want, and not fall apart from it, but rather, like, family loses everything. What can I glean from that as being something that is valuable? Well, that forced me into entrepreneurship, and that helped me find my ikigai, my life's work. What can I take from the fact that I'm in Austin, Texas, and had this crazy day at South by with you? And I found out my grandmother died. Well, like, I'm like filled again. 2-week roadshow. I feel more grateful today, more gratitude today than I have in the last 13 days, because it was a reminder that, holy shit, I grew up with my grandmother. She was around to see her great grandchildren, my daughters. Most people don't have that.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing. And I feel what you, exactly as you expressed, and I'm sorry for your loss.
Thank you for saying that.
And
I don't mean to sort of take this in a sort of sad direction, but
no.
It wouldn't be an honest conversation if I didn't say, like, hey, look, I lost my grandmother earlier today.
What are the pivotal lessons you learned from her?
Oh, man. Okay, so I've been thinking a lot about this because I knew she was going to pass at some point soon. This is just a hypothesis or a belief that I have, and I can't prove it, but one of the things that I realize is there is an entire generation of children and grandchildren, now great-grandchildren, from Holocaust survivors, descendants, particularly in North America, because frankly, most people that survived the Holocaust did not stay in Eastern Europe. After the Holocaust, my family went to Hungary. Hungarian Revolution happens in 1956. My family immigrates to Canada. My grandfather sells eggs. My father starts, entrepreneuring and starting a bunch of businesses. But there is this inherent desire to succeed that is unbelievable. I got a chance to spend some time with Scooter Braun recently. Do you know Scooter? He's a great guy. He's iconic. I mean, he's the guy that, like, literally found and built Bieber's career and Ariana Grande. And I spent some time with Scooter recently. We had this exact conversation that this multi-generational trauma has actually turned into multi-generational ambition. And I think, for real,
Chills.
It's legit. And I don't know if there's a book written. Maybe there probably is a book written about it already. But my grandmother and grandfather saw their family get killed, like saw it visibly, and then made their way to Hungary afterwards, and then made their way to Canada, and somehow created a life for their family where they just worked really hard. Family dinners, we didn't talk about the Holocaust. We talked about family and love and care and tradition. That is real resiliency. And so now you think about what we're all kind of going through, macro economy, inflation rates, post-COVID, you kind of put things in perspective here. If they were able to not only survive, but like actually thrive years after the Holocaust and not let that define their lives, but rather use that as a catalyst to be successful, we're good. You and I are good. Hopefully we never have to deal with that. And so what I learned from my grandmother is incredible resiliency. She probably harbored so much inside what she saw in those concentration camps, and I never saw her upset. When she saw me, she immediately smiled. Come in. Here's some, she used to make amazing, delicious Hungarian food, cholent and what's called halishkas, which are these cabbage rolls. And I only felt love from her. I only felt joy from her. And so if she can feel joy and she can give love and she can create this family, ambition that's going to carry through multi-generations after her, I can get through pretty much anything that the world throws at me.
What's going on there? Because so many of the people, some of the people that I've studied, like Viktor Frankl, comes out of it on the other side.
Viktor Frankl's, if I just interviewed before I got here, Tim Ferriss, just around the corner from here at the Shopify space. And I didn't get a chance to ask this, but Tim asked, when you finished doing his podcast, which I did a few years ago, he has two questions. One is, if you had a billboard, what would it say? And the second is, what is one book that influenced you? And the book he asked me about the one I said was Viktor Frankl. I was going to ask him the same, but I didn't get a chance. But Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning, is unequivocally, I think, the most important book for me and frankly for anyone who has dealt with any type of trauma or feels some sort of multi-generational trauma. Because ultimately, here's a guy who's in the concentration camps where everyone around him is being killed, his family's not around, they lose everything, and somehow he finds meaning in a concentration camp. Now, in the case of Viktor Frankl, he found meaning on sort of the healthcare side. He was a valuable member of sort of like, he took care of people as a doctor, effectively, in these concentration camps. And he's like, this is meaning for me. And the Viktor Frankl Men's Search for Meaning, that book I think is so important because it means you can find meaning in every situation. If I have a friend of mine, so most of my friends are now, I don't know, 5 to 10 years since getting married. And some of us are super happily married. I'm in that camp. I feel very, very grateful to have found my partner in my life with Lindsay. But some of my friends actually are now at the age now where you're starting to see some divorces. And two types of friends. Some friends are getting divorced and their life is like, it's a disaster. They cannot, like, it's like everything is falling apart. And there are others who sort of view this as, both men and some women in this case, who are like, no, this is the best thing for everybody. We are going to have like we weren't happy. We are now going to find more happiness. And so I think the way that you react to these situations, whether you lose all your money or you lose your spouse, your partner, or you lose a loved one, the way that you react says everything about your character. And as crazy as it sounds, the more experience you have with having those resilient moments, the stronger you become over time. And for that reason, I think my grandmother was the strongest person I've ever met, because like she had the craziest moment of sacrifice and trauma happen to her, being a small child in a concentration camp. And she continued to live, and she inspired generations to come. So I love the Viktor Frankl thing, not because it's a sad story, it's a happy story. Because no matter what situation you're in, you can absolutely find real meaning in it if you search for it. And you just have to look and say, look, all this stuff is bad, but like, every morning I get to go do this thing, and that person, smiles at me and I smile back and I make their day. And even though my day is filled with stuff I don't want to do, that moment where I smile at that person on the side of the street and I know that person's day is made better because of me, well, that makes it all worth it. Looking for those little moments is really important. By the way, that goes back to the beginning of this conversation around mindfulness and being present. The only way to find meaning is to actually be present, to feel like, the attention to detail in the studio we're in right now. You pick these chairs because they're really comfortable, and you have the fireside chat, the fire here, fake fire here, because it makes it seem a little bit more cozy in here. And you have plants because it makes you feel a little bit, I don't know, it creates a vibe in here, right? You've done a great job with this thing. You've created a space that feels comfortable, that feels cozy, that makes me want to open up more. But in order for me to actually see all these things and notice the chair is comfortable, you have to actually be in the room right now and be focused and be present. And I say that because I don't think I'm very good at that generally. I'm trying to become more present. But I think if you're not, you miss out on those things. And it's very difficult to find meaning if you're fundamentally not present in the moment.
So does that imply that for a long time you did not have meaning in your life?
Yes, sir. Absolutely. I think I was far too caught up in ego and money and, very superficial, external validation. And I still am. But I'm now I guess I'm in phase 1 of that development, which is I can at least acknowledge it. But yeah, I was caught up for a long time and I still am, but again, I'm working towards it. It's the plight and the journey of an entrepreneur is a fascinating one because we get to build shit from scratch. We take like an idea, we turn it into something much bigger. And that is amazing, but it also forces us just naturally to be focused on external factors. That's not always a great thing.
How do you make your entrepreneurship journey about the service to other people?
You probably have a couple reasons why you started this podcast. One is because it's fun for you, and like if someone's going to pay you money at some point for this, that's amazing. Get paid for doing something really cool. That's awesome. 2 is maybe you think that some of the stories and lessons that you're able to extract from your guests are going to be value for other people. 3, maybe you got some swagger. Hey, I'm a podcaster. People know you. I mean, you're kind of Twitter famous at this point. That's probably a 2. So there's probably a bunch of reasons why you do it. Those are okay. It's okay that one of the reasons you want to have a podcast is because you like being Twitter famous, or that you like telling, your friends in high school that thought you were going to amount to much that, fuck you guys. I got a podcast now, and I get really interesting people to come on. And I don't think it matters the reasons why you do it. I just think you have to be just honest about it and say, I'm starting this podcast because I don't know what to do with my life, and let's see where it goes. But over time, what you need to sort of do with any of these things that we're working on is understand, is find meaning. During the pandemic, I started a side hustle called Fire Belly Tea with my best friend, David Siegel. And I did it for a few reasons. One is I wanted to use all Shopify's products and features. The last time I built a Shopify store was 2006. The second time was 2021. So a lot has changed over that period of time. The second was I actually found incredible value for me discovering incredible high-end green tea. Most people have never had really good green tea. Most people's green tea is like the tea that they consume. They got in a gift box or a gift bag at some auction or some charity, at some event or something, or someone brought over a bunch of tea to your house. I want people to discover actually really great green tea is not a little bit better than generic green tea. It's 10 times better, right? It's like this, it's totally different experience. But the third was I want to spend more time hanging out with a really good friend and tinkering on entrepreneurship. And I don't watch football on Sundays. I like to tinker on entrepreneurship. And so there are 3 reasons why I may have started. And each one of those reasons is a very good reason, but I don't want to pretend like I just started it because I want the world to experience really great tea. I also started because I like starting things from scratch. And the fact that it also helps me get a better understanding of Shopify, man, that ticks a lot of different boxes. But I think the important part is to just be honest about that stuff.
Yeah, and the thing is, the thing that you do can develop meaning or develop more meaning as you grow throughout the process.
Or it doesn't. I rediscovered DJ in the last 3 years. I DJ'd 500 bar and bat mitzvahs and weddings between the ages of 14 and 18 or 19 years old. And I stopped for a while. And then someone at Shopify, may have been Tobi, made a joke about me DJing a Shopify summit a couple years ago, one of our summits, I think in 2018 or so. And I did it. And I was like, yeah, I don't remember who it was. I was like, I'll do it, sure. And I loved it. I absolutely loved it. In fact, I have my whole set list on SoundCloud. If you go to SoundCloud and type in Harley Finkelstein, you will see a bunch of my sets. And then someone else said, hey, would you write a charity event for us, Boys and Girls Club? And I was like, sure. And then my daughter's school recently asked me, hey, would you DJ the father-daughter dance, or I think they call it VIP and Me dance at our school in Canada? And I was like, I'll do it as well. And so I was like, what I realized, I was like, DJing really makes me happy. And so I don't know if anyone is listening that actually has an idea for this, I would love to do a residency every third Thursday night at some club in Montreal. If they let me, I would love to go and do, I'm getting older now, so I can't do till 3 a.m., but I'd love to do a 10 p.m. to midnight set every third Thursday at some really great venue in Montreal or in Toronto or something. I'm rediscovering meaning in it. To be clear, when I used to DJ, when I was a kid, I did it for one reason: money. I like the fact that I was able to make a lot of money DJing. And what I realize now is, by the way, no one's paying me for DJing now. I'm doing it, the school's not paying me, charity's not paying me, Shopify definitely doesn't pay me to be a DJ, but I'm discovering I actually really like DJ. So the same exact activity, when I was a kid, it was about money. Now it's about joy. It gives me great joy. And I don't know, I want to find more stuff like that. I find joy in yakitori barbecue. I don't know why. It's a weird, strange thing, but I like the fact that I have to plan 3 days in advance when I want to make yakitori barbecue for my family and friends, because I have to order the right charcoal. You have to put the skewers in water for 2 full days. There's an intentionality to it. And then when it all comes together and my friends are over and we open a great bottle of wine or a bottle of tequila, and we make the grill, it takes 3 hours to heat up, and I start adding those skewers on and turning them, and my friends and my family are around me, and my daughters are like, Dad, let me try that, let's try that, and I'm giving these skewers to all my friends. It's so fun. So am I ever going to be the greatest yakitori chef Like on my block, no. Like I'm not like I'm never gonna be the best one in the world. Definitely not in my country. Definitely not in my city. Like I may not even be the best one in my little neighborhood in Ottawa, but I get joy from it. And so the only reason I even discovered yakitori was another friend of mine got into it a little bit. I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. Let me experiment. This idea of curiosity leads to finding meaning in certain things. And it's funny because, I'm in Texas and like you guys are famous in Austin for great barbecue. I have zero interest in doing like 6-hour smokers, where you like, you have a smoker and like that doesn't interest me. So if I would have been introduced to that, I'd be like, yeah, this is cool. I love eating it, but it's not like Texas barbecue is not my thing. But Japanese yakitori barbecue, for some reason, is my thing. And I think you need to be curious about a lot of different things in order to actually find out what those things of meaning are, and then fill your life with those. And you can do that, and you can also, run a very large public company. And I think one helps the other, in fact.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I love the emphasis on curiosity. You mentioned Tobi before. I'd love to learn, what is it like working with him? And what's the biggest thing you've taken away from all your years with him, starting at the little coffee shop to today?
It's incredible. I mean, he is, if anyone listening or anyone who's watching has ever had any interaction with Tobi, he's one of the smartest humans on the planet. He's so thoughtful. There is no one better to run Shopify or cares more about Shop than he does. And I really care about Shopify. I really love what I do, but he's a very, very special human. But the thing I think that our relationship is based on deep mutual respect for each other's crafts. And he doesn't always understand mine, and I don't always understand his. But we both, I think, believe, and we both are committed to being the best at what we do in the fucking world. We will do anything and everything to get there. And the one thing that has been sort of the basis, does that sound okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. There's a little beeping from the outside for those of you that just heard that. I think Tobi has always sort of he always saw a better version of me than I think I saw of me. And because of that, when I see him and I see his expectations of me, it motivates me to get better, to be faster, to be smarter, to be more thoughtful. When you find someone like that, you probably should hold on to them as long as you can. He requires me to pre-qualify for my job every year, which is really difficult because, it's that famous law of ecology. I think it's the law of ecology rule, law 3, which is in order for a species to survive, the species needs to grow at an equal rate or faster rate than the changing environment. Shopify, so the environment in this case is Shopify, and my development is sort of, the species of Harley needs to grow faster than the pace of change at Shopify. And Shopify changes and grows super fast. So because of this requalification condition, it's very motivating for me. And he helps me with that. He'll often say, hey, like, of all the things you're doing, there's this one thing that you're really, really good at. Why don't you focus on that? Instead of becoming well-rounded, focus on that one spike. And that has worked really, really well. But it's interesting, I think a lot of people that probably listen to your podcast, Annie, are new entrepreneurs or aspiring entrepreneurs. I think most people end up partnering or starting companies or working with people that are very much like them. Tobi and I are not alike. We like each other. We're literally next door neighbors. Like we enjoy each other's company. But we are not, we're not the same people. Like he's more introverted. I'm very extroverted. He's really cerebral. He always thinks about things from first principles and from a long-term product perspective. His brain is absolutely incredible. Whereas I'm more of a storyteller. And so as you think about starting companies, I actually I think more people should consider starting companies with people or working with people at companies if you're going to work for somebody that is not like you. Because I think that's where the alpha comes from. And, call it yin and yang or call it, I don't know, whatever the metaphor you want to use might be. That's the relationship with us. And I've been working for him for the last 14 years or so. And I will work for him the rest of my life if he'll have me.
So cool. What I love about Shopify in general is that you can work with new entrepreneurs and you can also work with people who have made it to the highest extremes like MrBeast. What is that like working with MrBeast, and how did that partnership come to be?
Yeah. Started actually with Tobi. Tobi, I think, was the lead funder for Team Trees, and then Team Seas. I think someone, I'm sure on this podcast is correct me, but I think he gave $1 more than Elon gave, which is brilliant. And then that's how Tobi's brain works. It's like, oh, like, I think this is really cool. It's like, I mean, what MrBeast is doing from the philanthropy perspective is incredible, and Tobi wants to contribute. And of course, he gave $1 more than Elon did, because he's a bit of a troll, and that's just kind of his style, which makes it really fun to work with him. But we got a chance to meet him through that. And, you know, what's cool about MrBeast, or Jimmy, which is his real name, is that you can't just pay to play with Jimmy. Like, you can't just throw money at him and say, here's a bunch of money. No matter how much money, he gets to choose who he works with. And so we first met him through Team Trees and then Team Seas. And then he launched his merch store on Shopify. I think he had 3 million subscribers at the time. And through that, we got a chance to meet him and help him as much as we possibly could. He would ask for something, we would over-deliver. He would ask for something else, we'd over-deliver. And over time, he just became a fan of Shopify's, and obviously we were already fans of his. And then we started talking about sort of collaborating on different videos together. And I think the first one we did was the island one, where he was giving away an island. And I think we helped, we sort of partnered him on that island video. And then we did a second video, which I forget right now, which exactly what it was. And the most recent video was the Antarctica video, where he named this mountain Mount Shopify. But the partnership, I mean, people talk about organic partnerships, and people talk about, you know, building real relationships. The people you really want to work with, you can't buy them. You can't simply say, here's an outrageous amount of money. And by the way, if you go back to the early days of Shopify, when you think about Tim Ferriss or Damon John or Seth Godin, or Maria Forleo or Tina Eisenberg, these are not people that you can simply just say, I want you to be a part of our community, a part of our ecosystem. You actually need to build real relationships. And so we've always really done that. I think part of the reason is Shopify has always been founder-led, right? Tobi is always, the founder is still leading the place. You know, I've been there for more than a third of my life now. And so we play a different game. We play the long game. I don't really give a shit what happens this quarter. But like, if I plant a seed now with someone that I really think is incredible, I was just with, at the Shopify, I was with Kevin from Tecovas. You know Tecovas?
I don't.
Their boot company, amazing, based here in Austin. Incredible. I think they have like 20-something stores, physical stores, huge. One of the greatest direct-to-consumer boot companies. You know, years ago when they were just getting started, we started helping them, and they would need something, we'd over-deliver for them and over-deliver it. And now, you know, Kevin came to say hi, and first thing, he gave me a big hug. Like, that is not a traditional relationship between, you know, quote-unquote software vendor and customer. Right? Oracle doesn't have that relationship with their customers. Salesforce doesn't have that relationship with their customers. No matter how great, you know, Larry at Oracle or Benioff is at Salesforce, the relationship that Shopify has with our customers, with our merchants, with our partners, with these advisors is just very unique. And it's because it's based on a long-term relationship. And I literally, you know, asked him 4 days ago, hey, I'm going to be at the Shopify space here in Austin during South by. Can you come by and have a chat? It's like, hell yeah, of course I can. That doesn't happen. It doesn't, most, like, you know, if Pepsi called, first of all, you'd probably say no to that, but even if he said yes, they'd have to pay a ton of money for it, and it'd be more transactional. That's not what people like Tim wants, and that's certainly not what Jimmy and MrBeast wants, right? MrBeast and his team, like Jimmy and his team, they want real partnership with with people that really give a shit about helping them over the long run. And working with him has been absolutely amazing. And watching him, I mean, he is truly one of the greatest entrepreneurs of our time. You know, everyone knows about Feastables now because I think it's one of the fastest growing chocolate bar company or chocolate bar brand in America. What you don't know is that Jimmy has Crohn's. And so the chocolate bar was actually a reaction to, he needed snacks at particular times. And he's like, hey, I'm going to make this for myself, and I can also share it with the world. And now Feastables is fucking huge, right? So I think there are a lot of creators out there. There are a lot of influencers out there. There's a lot of sort of brand makers out there. But the ones that all of us admire, there is real authenticity behind them. We're not talking about promotional product. And, you know, one of the stories that I often talk about is when I was a kid, the first concert that I went to was the Tragically Hip, which was a great Canadian band, iconic Canadian band. And I remember going up to the merch table and wanting to buy something to commemorate that concert experience. And it was like a shitty t-shirt with some print dates on the back, with all the tour dates on the back. You know what I'm talking about? Like those bad like concert t-shirts, and like you're never going to wear them, but you have them, but it has like, you know, different cities and different dates on the back. And it's an oversized t-shirt. It's kind of overly boxy. What I think is really neat is if the Tragically Hip were still around today, I think if you went to the merch table, you'd see something totally different. You'd see something more akin to what you'd see at a Drake concert, where you'd have this like OVO Canada Goose collab, or you'd have this amazing hoodie from OVO there at a Drake concert. Drake doesn't create merch. He created a brand, right? Him and Oliver created a brand around the Drake community. And you see that, you know, whether it's, if you look at your favorite, like Kylie Cosmetics, I think she, obviously, you know, she had an advantage because she was sort of already famous, but Kylie cares deeply about her products. She cares deeply about like Kylie Cosmetics. She's in the lab. She's tinkering. She's fixing things. She's trying to figure out what works, what doesn't work. The current vintage of creators and influencers and makers, they're entrepreneurs. They're really good entrepreneurs. The days of promotional products or, you know, slapping your name on some random product and saying, I made this product, those are over. And it's because the consumer simply doesn't allow it anymore. The consumer now says, I am only in, or a fan only says, I'm only in if it's legitimate and authentic. And even, you know, so Jimmy has that. And Tim Ferriss has that too. When you listen to Tim, you read his books, you read his blog, you listen to his podcast, the stuff that he talks about is the stuff he uses. I think this is a much better, more authentic time for entrepreneurship.
This is about putting soul, putting your heart into the product, into what you're building.
That's right.
And it's so clear that you guys are doing that at Shopify. But I can't help but notice that some part of that is your ability to tell a story in a charismatic way. How are you so charismatic?
Wow. It's very kind of you to say. I work really hard. No, not in, I don't know if, I'm not saying I'm charismatic or not, but I work really hard in storytelling. It is my craft. I think about it all the time. I'm constantly trying to tweak things. I rewatch everything. I will rewatch this video and this podcast 3 times to figure out, did I say too much? And did I go on any tangents or too many rants? That's my craft. In the same way that, you know, like on Sunday mornings or frankly Saturday nights, Tobi is tinkering with Shopify APIs and ChatGPT and building, you know, the new Shop bot, the new app, the new conversational commerce application inside of the Shop app, which is powered by ChatGPT. We are tinkerers at Shopify. We are 10,000 people, and all of us are tinkerers. We're all entrepreneurs. And the cool part is we get to build shit for other entrepreneurs, but we ourselves are entrepreneurs ourselves. And on the storytelling stuff, that is what my craft is. I practice it. I work really hard at it. It does not come easy. I think anyone that walks around pretending like their craft comes easy to them is full of shit. I wish we had more candor and more. I wish people were disclosed more about how hard they work on their stuff. Just because of the recency bias of that I was with Tim. Like Tim left the interview with me, and he couldn't hang out. I was like, "Where are you going?" He's like, "I need to go write for a little bit." Like he works so damn hard in his blog. He works so damn hard on having high quality discourse on his podcast. I know you do the same thing. I mean, the research that you've done, Danny, when I walked in here, you told me that you just passed by my high school. Like I don't think I've even said my high school name other than maybe one time or two times across every podcast or every piece of content I've ever done. You figured out what my high school was, and you actually randomly there because your grandparents live nearby. The people that do the work are the ones that are most successful. And please, for anyone watching, like if it looks easy, it's because it's years and years and years of practice that make it look a little bit easier. And by the way, that it doesn't get easier. There is no, okay, well, when I get to this size, or when I have this much money, or when I build a company that's this big, I can coast. There is no coasting. You're either in or you're out. And if you're in, you're going to constantly be working at this thing for the rest of your life. The cool part is, I think that's a very meaningful way to live your life. The less cool part is perhaps that there are going to be people you're going to meet that at some point just stop, and you're going to envy them. You're going to say, I wish I was chilling on the beach in Cabo like my friend so-and-so. But if you're listening to this podcast, there's a really good chance that's not who you are. You're probably going to be grinding the rest of your life, and hopefully you find a lot of meaning in that grind.
So beautifully said. I like to end these podcasts with a challenge. A challenge points to the place in your heart you believe people can take everything they've learned or something that they haven't or we haven't covered and do something with it, because you can listen to the podcast. What are you actually going to do from it? Do you have a challenge that comes to mind?
Many of you watching or listening have an idea that's been rolling around in your head. Maybe you think about it in the shower. Maybe you think about it when you're driving or when you're on a run or when you're working out, or I don't know. Maybe you just have a random idea. And if this idea comes up 10 times in the next 4 weeks, my challenge is to do something with it. It doesn't have to be a Shopify store. I think Shopify is a great place to start, but it's not a Shopify pitch. But do something with it. Go try it. Go tinker with it. If you decide that you have an idea to make the most, delicious beverage, and you're like, you know what, the Arnold Palmer, which is I think lemonade and iced tea, I can make it better by adding some soda water to it. Go try it and make it for your friends and family this weekend if they like it. Maybe you should, start selling that type of stuff too. If you have an idea about, a tea company, go try that. There is this apprehension to just getting started because you worry about failure. And Tim's new thing is called Cock Punch. You know this thing? It's a crazy, like, fantasy fiction thing that he's creating, this new show. One of the things he said when he first announced it was, I'm only going to do 6 episodes. He's going to do more than 6 episodes. But he said, I want to do 6 because it gave him this wonderful exit if it didn't actually work out. He did the same thing with his podcast too, by the way. I'm only going to do a few of these and see how it goes. So if you want, it makes you feel more comfortable, give yourself an exit and just say, hey, I'm creating the modern day version of the Arnold Palmer, and I'm going to try it out, and here's what it's going to be like. And maybe share your story with the world. Social media is a great place to do that. Let them follow your journey. But my challenge is, if something is rolling around in your head and you've thought about it 10 times or more, do something about it. Send it to me. You can find me on Twitter at HarleyF, and I will be a first customer for it. I will try it out, and I think that may or may not, but it may lead to you finding your life's work. And the sooner you find your life's work, the happier you're going to be, the more joy you're going to have, the more meaning you're going to find. And then the cool part is you get to work on that life's work, whether it's storytelling or it's content creation or it's interviewing interesting people or whatever it might, or it's making delicious yakitori. You get to work on it. And if you discover your life's work later in life, that's fine too. But the earlier you discover it, the more you can work on it, the better you become. And that is something that to take it back to my grandmother for a second, she never had the opportunity to work on her life's work. Life's work for her was surviving and putting food on the table. I get to actually do something that is deeply meaningful to me because I no longer have to worry about putting food on the table or making sure that I stay alive from day to day. And that is a great gift.
Harley, I'm so grateful for your time any day, but particularly on this one, I'm so appreciative for you. I can't thank you enough for your time, your energy, and your wisdom. We'll have all your links down below. And I just want to say I really appreciate you.
Thanks, Danny. Thanks for having me. And thanks all of you for listening. And I know this is sort of a strange podcast. I've listened to a lot of your other ones. Usually you guys go right into like the business, the entrepreneurship stuff. This is a little more personal, but this is real. And I want you to know the real stuff.
Appreciate the realness.